If intelligence automatically led to wealth, half the broke people in America would be rich by now. That's the uncomfortable truth nobody likes to say out loud. Because some of the smartest people you know, the straight A students, the analytical thinkers, the ones who can debate politics for hours and solve complex problems at work, are quietly living paycheck to paycheck. And it doesn't make sense. My name is Marcus, and I spend way too much time thinking about how smart people accidentally sabotage their own wealth. If you're someone who earns decent money but still feels like you're not getting ahead financially, make sure to hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out. Here's the thing. Being intelligent and being financially successful are not the same skill. In fact, sometimes high intelligence makes it harder to build wealth. And that's the part no one warns you about. Let's start with the first uncomfortable reality. Smart people are trained to optimize for correctness, not for outcomes. From the time you're young, you're rewarded for being right. Getting the right answer, showing your work, following the logical process. Intelligence becomes your identity. You're the smart one, the responsible one, the one who thinks things through. But money doesn't reward correctness. Money rewards behavior, and behavior is emotional. This is where it gets really interesting. A highly intelligent person can explain compound interest, inflation, tax brackets, and investment diversification, and still carry $8,000 in credit card debt at 22% interest. Let's do simple math. $8,000 at 22% interest costs about $1,760 per year in interest alone. That's almost $150 per month just to stay stuck. A smart person can calculate that instantly. But knowledge doesn't override impulse. Here's what most people don't realize. Smart people often trust their ability to figure it out later. And that confidence becomes expensive. Reason number 1. Smart people stay broke is overconfidence in future earning power. If you're intelligent, chances are you've always believed you'll land on your feet. You'll get the promotion. You'll increase your income. You'll solve the problem when it becomes urgent. So when you finance the $42,000 car instead of buying the $18,000 reliable used one, your brain says, "It's fine. I'll be making more in a few years." When you run up $5,000 on a credit card, you think, "I'll knock this out when my bonus hits." But here's the trap. Income growth is not guaranteed. Expenses, however, are very consistent. Let's say you earn $75,000 a year. After taxes, maybe you take home around $4,500 per month, depending on your state. You rent a decent apartment for $1,800. Car payment is $650. Insurance $180. Groceries $500. Utilities and subscriptions $350. Student loans $400. Gas $200. You're already around $4,080 before you've invested a single dollar. You're not irresponsible. You're just optimized for lifestyle first, wealth second. And because you're smart, you believe you can manage it. Reason number 2. Smart people stay broke is analysis paralysis. Intelligent people love researching, comparing options, reading reviews, watching videos, listening to podcasts. They'll spend 3 weeks deciding between 2 high-yield savings accounts that differ by 0.15%. Let's say one account pays 4.35% and another pays 4.50%. On $10,000, that difference is $15 per year. $15. But that same person will delay investing for 3 years because they're waiting to fully understand the market. If they had invested $10,000 into a broad market index fund, averaging 8% annually, after 10 years, it could grow to around $21,589. If they waited 3 years to feel certain, they lost thousands in compounded growth. Not because they weren't smart, but because they needed perfect clarity before acting. Perfectionism feels responsible. But in money, delayed action is often more dangerous than imperfect action. Now you might be thinking, okay, but being cautious isn't a bad thing. And you're right. Caution protects you from scams and bad investments, but excessive caution protects you from opportunity too. Here's reason number 3. Smart people optimize for comfort disguised as logic. They can rationalize almost anything. Ordering takeout 5 times a week? I'm busy. My time is valuable. Upgrading the phone every year? It's 0% financing. Living in the trendiest neighborhood? It's closer to work. I'll save time. Each individual decision makes sense, but wealth isn't built on individual decisions. It's built on patterns. If you spend $25 on lunch 4 times a week, that's $100 weekly, around $400 per month, nearly $5,000 per year. Invest $5,000 annually at 8% for 20 years, and you're looking at roughly $247,000. That's not about coffee. That's about trajectory. Smart people can justify lifestyle inflation faster than anyone because they have the language to defend it. And this leads to reason number 4, identity attachment. If you were always the smart kid, you probably built your self-worth around competence. You don't want to look inexperienced. So when investing feels confusing, you hesitate to ask basic questions. When budgeting feels restrictive, you reject it because I shouldn't need that. But here's the quiet truth. Budgeting isn't about intelligence. It's about visibility. A CEO making $400,000 a year can outspend their income just as easily as someone making $50,000. Money doesn't care about IQ. It cares about arithmetic. This is where it starts to sting a little. Smart people often prioritize appearing successful over becoming wealthy. They get the degrees, the credentials, the job titles, the apartment that signals progress, the car that reflects achievement. Because intellectually, it feels aligned. You worked hard, you deserve proof of it. But wealth is usually invisible in the early stages. Driving a paid-off Honda while investing $1,200 a month doesn't look impressive. Maxing out a 401k instead of upgrading your lifestyle doesn't generate social validation. Here's what most people don't realize. There's a massive difference between high income and high net worth. You can earn $120,000 a year and still have a net worth of negative $15,000 if your liabilities outpace your assets. Meanwhile, someone earning $65,000 who consistently invests $800 a month can quietly build a 6-figure net worth within several years. Intelligence tends to chase optimization. Wealth requires repetition. And that brings us to the 5th reason smart people stay broke. They confuse information consumption with financial progress. They watch hours of financial content, read books, follow market news, compare economic trends. It feels productive. But learning about investing is not the same as investing. Understanding tax strategy is not the same as contributing to your Roth IRA. Knowing the S&P 500 average return is not the same as owning it. Information creates the illusion of movement. Behavior creates actual movement. And here's the part that dismantles one of the biggest beliefs smart people hold about money. They believe that once they fully understand finances, they'll finally take control. But financial success doesn't come from complete understanding. It comes from committing to simple actions before you feel fully ready. And that belief, that you must first feel confident, certain, and informed before acting, is exactly the mental model keeping you stuck, because confidence is not the cause of action. Action is the cause of confidence. Here's what most people don't realize. Financial momentum is built in ignorance, not reckless ignorance, not blind gambling, but the willingness to move forward with partial understanding. Smart people wait until they've eliminated uncertainty. Wealthy people act while uncertainty still exists, and that gap, that tiny behavioral difference, compounds just like money does. This is where it gets really interesting. If you study behavioral finance research over and over again, the pattern is consistent. It's not the highest IQ earners who accumulate the most wealth. It's the most consistent investors, the least reactive, the least emotionally dramatic, not the smartest, the steadiest. And here's the credibility piece that matters. Across decades of market data, Average investors consistently underperform the very funds they invest in. Not because the funds are bad, but because investors jump in and out. They buy when things feel safe and sell when things feel scary. Repeated outcome. Same pattern. High earners, smart people, doctors, engineers, attorneys, still underperforming simple index funds because behavior overrides intelligence. Now you might be thinking, okay, but I'm not panic selling. I'm just trying to be strategic. And that's fair. But let's zoom out. If you invest $1,000 per month into a diversified index fund averaging 8% annually, over 25 years that becomes roughly $950,000. Not because you were brilliant, because you were consistent. If you skip the first 5 years waiting for the right time and start in year 6, that same $1,000 per month becomes around $615,000 instead. That 5-year delay costs you over $300,000. That's not an intelligence problem. That's a behavior timing problem. And smart people are especially vulnerable to timing mistakes because they believe they can outthink cycles. They believe if they just study enough charts, enough economic data, enough Federal Reserve policy, they'll enter and exit at optimal points. But the market doesn't reward intelligence. It rewards time. Here's the mid-video belief flip that changes everything. Smart people don't stay broke because they lack knowledge. They stay broke because they overvalue knowledge and undervalue systems. Systems remove emotion. Systems remove decision fatigue. Systems make wealth boring. And boredom is what builds money. Look, if every month $800 automatically moves from your checking account into investments before you even see it, you don't need motivation. You don't need discipline. You don't need to wake up inspired. You need a rule. That's it. One rule. Never spend money that hasn't passed through your investment account first. That single behavioral rule changes the direction of your entire financial life, because now lifestyle becomes the leftover, not the priority. Now, let's go deeper into psychology. Intelligent people often tie self-worth to flexibility. They like optionality. They want the freedom to pivot, change careers, move cities, start projects. So they avoid financial rigidity. They avoid strict investing schedules. They avoid automatic deductions because structure feels limiting. But here's the paradox. Structure creates freedom. If you automatically invest $1,200 per month and build that habit for 5 years, you don't just build assets. You build options. After 5 years at $1,200 per month with an 8% average return, you're looking at roughly $88,000 to $95,000 invested, depending on timing. That's runway. That's career flexibility. That's negotiation power. But if you delay and instead spend that $1,200 on lifestyle upgrades, nicer apartment, better car, more travel, you create dependency instead of freedom. And dependency feels like pressure, which leads to more emotional spending, which leads to more rationalization, and the cycle continues. Now let's address something uncomfortable. Smart people often underestimate the emotional side of money because they pride themselves on being logical. But money decisions are rarely logical. They're identity-driven. If your identity says, "I'm successful," you'll buy things that signal success. If your identity says, "I'm disciplined," you'll protect savings. If your identity says, "I deserve comfort because I work hard," you'll justify consumption. The external numbers always follow internal identity. This is why two people earning the same $90,000 salary can have completely different financial trajectories. One increases spending every time income rises. The other increases investments every time income rises. 10 years later, one is stressed. The other is stable, not smarter, just system-driven. Here's what most people don't realize. Smart people are often future-oriented thinkers. They think in hypotheticals, possibilities, big-picture strategy. But wealth is built in present-tense behavior. It's built in this month's automatic transfer, this week's spending decision, today's restraint. You don't build wealth in theory. You build it in repetition. And repetition feels beneath someone who prides themselves on intelligence. It feels too simple, too obvious, too boring. But boring is undefeated. Now let's talk actionable shifts. First behavioral rule: automate before you optimize. This week, not next quarter, set up an automatic investment transfer, even if it's $300 per month, even if it's $150. The amount matters less than the automation. Second rule: cap lifestyle inflation at 50% of raises. If you get a $10,000 raise, don't upgrade your life by $10,000. Upgrade by $5,000. Invest the other $5,000. That single habit over a decade of career growth can create a six-figure gap in net worth. Third, define a minimum investing floor. For example, 15% of gross income. Non-negotiable. If you make $80,000, that's $12,000 per year. $1,000 per month. Below that, lifestyle doesn't expand. Above that, lifestyle earns permission. Now, you might be thinking, but what if the market crashes? It will. That's not a possibility. That's a certainty. The S&P 500 has dropped more than 20% multiple times in modern history, and yet over long periods, it has historically averaged around 8 to 10% annually. Crashes are part of the system, not a signal to abandon it. If anything, downturns are discounts, but only if you're still investing. This month, open your retirement account and increase your contribution by 1%. Just 1%. If you're at 10%, go to 11%. You will barely feel it in your paycheck. But over 20 years, that single percentage point can add tens of thousands of dollars to your retirement balance. Small adjustments, massive time impact. Now here's the deeper shift. Stop trying to feel financially confident. Instead, aim to become financially consistent. Confidence comes and goes. Consistency compounds. And the calm truth is this: most wealthy people are not constantly thinking about money. They built systems that think for them. They removed daily decisions. They removed ego. They removed the need to prove anything. They chose boring over impressive. And over time, boring became powerful. If you're intelligent, you already have the analytical ability to understand compound interest, tax-advantaged accounts, diversification. That's not your bottleneck. Your bottleneck is identity. Are you someone who optimizes lifestyle or someone who optimizes net worth? Those are different games. One feels good immediately. The other feels good later. And smart people struggle because they believe they can delay discipline without long-term cost. But time charges interest on hesitation. The earlier you shift from proving intelligence to practicing consistency, the faster the gap closes. You don't need another book. You don't need another spreadsheet. You need a rule, a system, a commitment that runs even when you're distracted. If this made you uncomfortable, good. Discomfort is usually where identity shifts begin. Subscribe if you want more honest conversations about money that actually move the needle. Like this video if it helped you see your habits differently. And in the comments, tell me this: are you optimizing for income or for net worth? Because once you answer that honestly, your financial life starts changing in ways intelligence alone never could. That's all for today. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.